Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to break down the new Black Adam movie. Jumping right in, we pick up in Kahndaq, if I'm saying that right, but 5,000 years ago, following those who know only slavery after their king becomes obsessed with obtaining more power. This is where we're introduced to the mineral Eternium, which contains magical qualities and can complete the crown, thus giving the wearer the abilities of the 6 most powerful demons in hell. This is where the main villain of the story comes into play. As we find out later in the movie, through a series of scattered flashbacks, it's revealed Teth Adam wasn't the original champion chosen by the wizards to wield the powers of Shazam. Rather, it was his son, until he transferred his abilities to Teth in order to save his life. The same wizard/actor from the Shazam movie even made an appearance. Black Adam's origin was quickly teased in that film, so now we finally have all of the pieces. The transferring of the abilities could also be compared to how at the end of Shazam, Billy Batson splits his powers among his own family. But of course, sadly the King's men were waiting to strike while this all happened, which is where we see our rageful Black Adam come into play and leads us into present day. A lot of the action in this first fight seems a little reminiscent of the way they were portrayed in Man of Steel, with the really fast and brutal movements, which I'm honestly a huge fan of and could be a subtle connection on what's to come. Seeing Black Adam released from his prison for the first time was also just awesome in itself. The hooded look was menacing, not to mention the torn cape and how cool it was the way his lightning bolt was reactive just like Shazam's. Even the way he flies seemed so effortless, so you immediately get the sense that this guy is super powerful. I mean, he literally fried the one guy, which was much darker than what I expected to see. And don't even get me started on just how insane that all slow motion fight scene was. Like, I know we've seen the quote-unquote Quicksilver scene done a few times now, but that didn't bring this action down at all and was an insane introduction to a lot of his abilities early in the film. The comedy throughout also really worked for me. Something I didn't notice at first, but suspected, was that the actor Marwan Kenzari, who plays Ishmael/Sabak, also played his ancestor, the King. So if you caught that, then you were already about, say, an hour ahead of everyone else. Along those same lines, if you've listened closely to the voice of the father in the beginning, you'll notice it's actually The Rock speaking, which also helps you put some pieces together early on. I think his voice is pretty recognizable, but I just shrugged it off as not hiring another voice actor. After we're taken to the city, we can see all kinds of DC merch in Amon's room depicting the Justice League. When we're first introduced to him, he even drops a few comic books. Another comparison to the Shazam movie is how Amon and Freddy are both huge superhero fans, and both end up helping Billy and Black Adam become who they are today. Now, around this part of the movie is when we're introduced to the Justice Society of America, or at least what's left of it. We get more than a brief cameo from Amanda Waller, who was in both Suicide Squad films, as well as Harcourt, who was just seen in Peacemaker. To me, this was a really smart move to make with all of the struggles I'm sure the movie faced when trying to connect it to the overall DC universe. It's been a little messy with multiple timelines and different fan bases, but to lean on what was one of their most recent successes like this was just such a good decision in my opinion. As the JSA take off and the backyard opens up to reveal their ship, this of course made me realize that a lot of the movie seems to take almost direct inspiration from other superhero films, which I've heard many others say as well. I mean, this is bound to happen with the release of so many nowadays, but some things do seem a little more on the nose than others. Like this scene in particular can be compared to the X-Men movies, but it honestly didn't bother me. But back at the apartment, we see Black Adam take inspiration from an old western. Because of this, he decides to use his lightning abilities while pointing his fingers to mimic a gun. Which, funny enough, Shazam does this as well in his movie. And arguably one of the funniest pieces of dialogue are the constant failed catchphrases from Black Adam. The struggle to fit into modern society as a man out of time, similar to characters like Captain America or Thor, really worked for me. As previously mentioned, Amon's bedroom is full of Justice League and comic book material. One thing that stood out to me was a little Batman statue sitting on a shelf. I thought this looked a lot like Batman from the Injustice 2 video game, but it was kind of hard to tell because it went by so fast. And I don't think this is a reach either, considering Dr. Fate pulls a direct move out of that game later on. The promos for the movie of Black Adam sitting on the throne and the way he ground slams it at the end are also things Black Adam has been seen doing in other forms of media. And while destroying the room, there's also a huge foreshadowing moment as he punches through the poster of Superman's symbol and burns his face off, clearly teasing the post-credits scene and what might be coming in the universe now. You could also expand this idea into him versus the Justice League, since he also destroyed March of them all. Now, something random that caught my attention, and possibly yours too if you watched the Flash TV show, is what appears to be the same actor who played the chief of police as one of the main civilians we see. There's most likely no correlation with it, but I like to think of it as a funny multiverse coincidence, especially considering both the CW Flash and the DCU Flash crossed over. Seeing the JSA in action, well, really all the action in the movie, was phenomenal to me. Like, I've always been a sucker for slow motion, dramatic shots, and there's clearly no shortage of them here. Personally, it always draws me in and helps the stakes a little bit. So seeing them utilize this method was great. A lot of the cinematography was just plain awesome. Like how the camera panned through different helmet shots of Dr. Fate during the final battle. I could literally go on and on about Cyclone's slow motion scenes, Hawkman's wings and mace, and Atom Smasher's comedy. But to put it simply, I loved it all. They felt like a real team to me, as well with all of their individual dynamics. Even Atom Smasher and Cyclone had a hint of romance going on, but it didn't even come close to overpowering the other themes or distract me from the main story. It's just nice and subtle and will feel more rewarding later on, especially if it's explored more down the line. But to sum it up, we just met these characters, and I'm already attached. Jumping to the final fight against Sabak, which was also a cool way to reveal the villain, was fast but still felt fairly large in scale. Like I was saying, at this point, I'm already attached to these characters. So seeing Dr. Fate sacrifice himself did hit pretty hard. I'd love to see him in a prequel show or movie about him. Or just bring in the whole original JSA team with Hawkman and even Red Tornado, considering his connection to Cyclone. The whole future timeline vision thing can also be seen as a pretty common thing now within the DCU, at this point ever since, it started in Batman v Superman, and carried on from there, but I'm not complaining. I was caught pretty off guard seeing Black Adam rip Sabak literally in half, which was just awesome, and what this movie needed to keep an anti-hero feel. I think this movie also did a better job with the anti-hero theme compared to others like Venom or Morbius, since I can still see him going crazy for his home at the end. I really don't have to wonder what the story of the next film will cook up just to make the anti-hero go bad again, like I do with Venom and Morbius, especially because of the post-credit scene. Then the film comes to an end with us getting to see his new suit. With more gold accents and a nice cape, you can tell he definitely feels more heroic than ever before. While he still isn't afraid to do whatever's necessary, he does truly care for his home and the people in it, even after how much it's changed over the thousands of years. Lastly, we've got to talk about that post-credits scene. The only way I can really describe the scene is amazing. It felt like a real tease to the future and a little bonus to the movie, rather than some say like deleted scene or unimportant addition. With Amanda Waller showing up and telling Black Adam he can't leave, it basically already set up a reason for Superman and whoever else to intervene. But of course, Henry Cavill's return alone as the Man of Steel in what he revealed to be the original Man of Steel outfit was glorious. Of course, The Rock didn't necessarily hide it, and DC kind of revealed Man of Steel 2 to be in the works before this movie had been out for very long. But seeing it actually happen after so much behind the scenes chaos with bringing Superman back was something all fans could appreciate. I mean, he even had the classic curl. So even if the movie turned out bad, the post-credit scene alone would have been worth watching the entire thing. Overall, I had an absolute blast with this movie. It really exceeded my expectations, and more than anything, it felt refreshing. Even if it did copy a lot of other superhero movies. And maybe that's why I felt refreshed, because it did things earlier superhero movies did. I can for sure say it was definitely worth the watch in theaters as well. I honestly don't always feel the need to go to theaters all the time for movies, but this one I'm super glad I ended up seeing. All of the suits and designs in the film were perfect, so props to the designers for that. Nothing felt too over-designed or underwhelming. It was right in the sweet spot for me, especially Dr. Fate's. I saw a total of maybe 2 awkward CGI and green screen scenes, but other than that, I stayed fully interested in the movie without anything drawing me out. Before going in, I saw a lot of complaints about The Rock just playing the same character in every movie, and I'm glad to say that I didn't feel that way with this one. I was a little worried about setting the bar too high for it because, The Rock was casted all the way back in 2007. He's been working on this movie for years. But he actually managed to change the course of the DCU and bring back one of the most, if not the most, popular characters of the franchise, who's clearly been on the sidelines for way too long. And I love the Snyder Cut. I thought it had a real direction, and I'm always a fan of seeing a hero's dark side. But with that said, I do like to see the heroic side prevail nonetheless. So I'm super excited for Superman's brighter future. Other than Man of Steel 2, it seems like he might even return for a fight against Black Adam. The Rock says he wants a Black Adam vs. Superman film, which I could see happening in Black Adam 2, Man of Steel 2, Shazam 3, or possibly even Justice League 2. But that might be a little overkill. Or make it an entirely different standalone film like Batman v Superman was. I mean, at this point, let's just get a trilogy of just Superman versus movies. But no matter where he shows up again, all I know is that this movie has truly given me hope and has me excited for what the future of DC has to offer. But what did you think? Did you enjoy Black Adam? Let me know your thoughts and comment below if there's anything I missed, because I'd love to hear it. And that's that. See ya.